Hi, it's Steve Hargadon, and welcome to the 2017 Global Education Conference. This is our 7th year. We're just having a ball. We're especially delighted to have Kevin Smith here. Kevin's the Senior Director of Global Schools for VIF International Education. Kevin, go ahead and click on your talk button again and say hi.
Good morning, everyone. I'm excited to be here with you and to have this opportunity to talk global education and dual language and just have a wonderful conversation. Looking forward to our discussion this morning.
And Julie Keene is with you, right?
Yes, so I harnessed all the powers in the universe and was able to get Julie Keene just to sit in as a guest contributor this morning. And she and I have been doing a lot of work around global ed and looking specifically at correlations with dual language programs. So from time to time, Julie is going to chime in and give us the research perspective on things.
Hi.
Thanks for being here, Julie. Go ahead and click your talk button off again while I go through the next 2 slides. Thanks for doing that. And thanks to our sponsors and supporters. And you'll notice that VIF International Education is one of our primary sponsors. We express a deep appreciation for the support that they have been giving us over the last few years. Thanks to Google for Education, to TES, Iron USA, and don't miss the Chrome Warrior gamified badges program that Lucy has put together as a part of the conference this year. All of our other sponsors and supporters are on the website. If you express appreciation to them, let them know that you're glad they helped make this a free event. Now is your chance to indicate on the map your location. Look to the left of the map. You're going to see some icons appear. The one you're looking for is the second one down. It's the star icon. Click on it twice and then click on the map. Some of you knew just what to do. Govinda and Nepal gets it up there quickly. Put a shout out in the chat as well. It's always fun to know the location, time, and temperature. Anything else that you think would be fun for us to know. I'm guessing is that somewhere in the Pacific. Is that Hawaii? I would have thought Hawaii would be lower. Okay, Guam, that's Guam, Thomas. Romania, Nepal, Vegas, Iowa. Vegas is its own country. Phoenix. Okay, go ahead and keep that going in the chat. And I'm now going to move us forward and turn the time over to Kevin. He's going to ask for my help in a couple of places, and I'll come back.
Thank you, Steve. So again, good morning from the East Coast of the United States. It is a cool morning here. Enjoying some great fall weather and no rain thus far, although we kind of need it because there are a few forest fires in the region. But despite that, we are enjoying a wonderful time here in North Carolina. I hope you're all doing well from around the world, and it's very encouraging to see so much participation from so many different places, and please continue to populate that map. I'm going to take a snapshot of that for my own enjoyment later. So my name is Kevin Smith, and as Steve said, I'm the Senior Director of Global Schools here at VIF. It's an interesting way in which I came to the field of global education, and it started many, many, many years ago when I lived in Costa Rica, and that's where I am from originally. Started out being a language teacher and teaching English as a foreign language, teaching Spanish down there as well, and got involved in in-service education. In that in-service education, we were introduced to cross-cultural learning, and then got involved as a trainer with some projects with AID and the embassy in Costa Rica and a couple of other countries in Latin America. So it's full circle that I'm now doing this, and certainly very interesting that the field continues to grow and expand and draw interest from around the world. Currently, as the director at VIF, we partner with schools and districts to develop global programs. And by global programs, we're talking about dual language immersion programs and also global studies programs, or what we call global schools. And today I'm happy to share some of those findings that we have learned over the past 11 years from both the dual language and the global schools programming that we have developed. So what we would like to do, excuse me, is to just start our discussion by talking about that one little premise that I included in the abstract summary, and that is that most of us are familiar, of course, with the idea that when you teach a language, you're also teaching culture. And that is not an incorrect assumption. There is certainly a level of cultural exposure and cultural experimentation and curiosity that is built within any language development course. So today we'll talk a little bit about that and about some of the other assumptions that are wrapped into that whole notion and idea. And that is that even when it is true that language and culture go together, it assumes that that cultural, that global competence bit, that global competence feature is done with quality and is done systematically, and that teachers know how to go about it. And that's where we run into problems, because that is not always the case. So we will discuss some thoughts, some experiences. We will pull together that were pulled together by our team over the last few years as we conducted research, as we engaged schools and teachers in learning about how to be global educators and exposing children to some global learning. So that's what we will spend our time doing. I want to encourage you to submit your questions through the chat feature, and not sure how we're going to address those, but certainly Julie is going to help me manage some of that. And Steve, if at any time there are questions that are significant, I really don't mind stopping and addressing some of those, and hopefully be able to answer some of those questions on the go. I am a very casual person, and so I would love to think that this can be a conversation, even though I'm leading the discussion. From time to time, I would like to stop and address a couple of things, and Julie certainly will chime in when she feels it's also necessary for us to make some additional comments. So that's just what I look like on good days. Don't worry about
that's
that
not
picture.
true. It looks like that all the time.
Takes a lot of work to get to that point. But again, my organization is VIF International Education, and you can go to our website to find some additional resources, and those resources are also listed on the last slide of this presentation for you to have access to them. My email is there, and feel free to drop me a note with your comments and questions following this session. So let's begin with talking a little bit about some of those general assumptions about dual language programs, also known as immersion programs, in some other countries known as bilingual programs. So we're going to be using these terms rather loosely today and not specifically just the way they are framed here in the United States. There are some technical distinctions between the way bilingual education is conceived across the globe and the way it is used here in the United States. But for our purposes today, we're going to talk about dual language immersion programs, and we are going to equate those during this session to what we know around the world as bilingual education as well. So there are 3 or 4 main goals that have been established for dual language immersion programs, and those are typically well known within the field. The first one, of course, is that students will gain proficiency levels that are higher than that of foreign language programs or other lower exposure programs in terms of amount of time in content in the language. So the main goal, or one of the main goals in dual language programming, is certainly to have children become bilingual and biliterate, that they operate across different subject areas, not just the language arts or language lesson, but that they can operate in their home language and that second language across math, science, social studies throughout their academic career, beginning in pre-K or kindergarten and all the way through middle school or high school. So that's one of the premises. The second premise is that students will experience academic growth and achievement, and that is something that we have seen. That is a trend that we've tracked over the years, and there is a huge body of research on student achievement when participating in dual language programs. And here is what we have seen in trends, particularly here in the United States, but also in other countries, that when students participate of well-built, well-established dual language programs, those children will operate, when measured against standardized tests, norm tests, that they will experience academic achievement in areas like math, science, and certainly language arts or literacy at the same level or higher than that of their peers who are in traditional programs. And that is significant because, of course, when we think about being educated across 2 different languages, we are automatically assuming that there is some sacrifice from one language over the other. And research shows the very opposite. Research shows that when students learn through the medium of at least one other language, that it helps to strengthen their academic performance, and that is very encouraging. And then there is this third premise that is shaded in green purposefully, because it deals with the aspect of children learning to be global citizens by virtue of being part of an immersion program, of a language program, of a dual language program. And so we expect that students will develop cross-cultural skills, that they will become more globally aware, that they will learn how to coexist, how to share, how to learn from each other, how to communicate with their peers. And the reason why it is shaded in green is because this is the one area that is not does not have that specific framework.
And yeah, I just wrote in the chat, I was sort of channeling Kevin there for Peggy. Peggy had asked what global immersion meant, and sometimes when we talk about immersion, we are really talking about the immersion or in the target language and building into a language classroom. And so what Kevin's talking about now is that we're trying to really bring that immersion and the global together, and making sure that global sort of isn't forgotten or just assumed that it happens just through language. That there are other aspects of the curriculum that need to be addressed in dual language classrooms to make sure the global piece is there.
All right. Thank you, Julie. And so here's the current state of global education when it comes to the supports, the frameworks that are available. And I think Julie was referencing this just a minute ago. When we think about language teaching and language learning, especially when it's framed under immersion programs or bilingual programs across the globe, there are models out there. There is curriculum that is available. There are frameworks that are available. There is a growing group of able and trained teachers that know, coming into the field, how to deal with teaching content through the medium of a second language, and certainly a vast amount of professional development that is available for teachers and schools to access. Furthermore, there are assessments available to measure academic achievement for students that are part of immersion or bilingual programs, and to measure the effectiveness of those programs in terms of their status, in terms of their health. Not all languages are covered under these, under all this structure that is available. So there is a lot for example, Spanish immersion. There is a lot for English language learning around the globe. There are fewer resources, for example, when you refer to Mandarin immersion, when you refer to Arabic, when you refer to French, and when you refer to Portuguese, as some of the other languages that are also included in bilingual programs or immersion programs. But again, let's look at the bottom part of this slide, and let's talk a little bit about the support that is in place for global. When we look at the initiatives around global learning, we know that a lot of those initiatives are started by individuals, by small groups of people who are committed to teaching from a global perspective, who have discovered the value of global education and bring it back to their schools, bring it back to their districts, bring it to their classrooms. Sometimes it is just that individual commitment. And then there is some organizational support, and I'm happy to say that this organizational support at the school level and at the district level, and even at the government level, is growing over time. But it still is work in progress. And then the third thing is that there is limited professional development that is framed within a system and an approach where teachers can learn how to become global educators and how to move that needle from being a novice global educator to a more experienced global educator, and at the same time take their students from being curious about learning about the world and about cultures to being proficient global citizens and all the skills that fall within that. So that is where we are in terms of global education. There are a lot of great individual and small-scale initiatives out there, and there are a few larger-scale organizations that are promoting global education from a framework, from a systems approach. And I think that also is very encouraging. And that is what we do here at VIF. We are trying to get as many children exposed to education that is of quality and that has a global nature to it, and we think that is quality education. Quality education includes the math and the science and the social studies and the literacy, certainly, but a quality education is global in nature, where we learn how people live around the world and what their struggles are and how that relates to what we are living and what we're experiencing wherever in the world that we are.
Yeah. Yeah, we're just reading some more comments from Peggy about the dual language programs. Have had a rocky road in Arizona, and now they're starting to bring it back. And I think a lot of the data that we're seeing from all over the country is Kevin's already mentioned this, the kind of extraordinary impact that dual language can have on all groups, every single group, language folks, previously low-achieving kids. I mean, most of the programs that we work here in North Carolina are predominantly African-American. This is a group that usually is not even targeted for dual language immersion, which is pretty horrendous given the sort of, the persistent achievement gap that we have here in the U.S., and I'd love for our international folks to sort of talk about this issue a little bit. But where we're seeing what I think, and then I'll just leave it to Kevin, what we were seeing in the dual language programs is that we were working with only separate tracks in the school. So some schools didn't have the student population or the interest or the teaching staff to have a whole dual language school. And so we were running and supporting separate tracks. And then what we were seeing was that the students in those tracks were outperforming their peers in the same school building. So then, while that's great news and we're running a great program, and Kevin's been doing like an incredible job supporting a huge number of schools here in the Southeast predominantly, we have an equity problem.
Correct.
You have half of the students in these schools really not benefiting from either the language instruction or the global education that we were starting to integrate very explicitly into those programs. And that's why we're trying to develop this global school model where you would have, maybe you would have some dual language tracks, but then the other tracks would be focused on global education. And we're seeing now whole school rise, all boats rise together, and so you don't have sort of a us against them kind of culture in the school. Everybody's there together. Some are doing language, some aren't, but everybody's doing global.
Exactly right. And so the big question becomes access and equity. How do we spread? Everyone who is attending this session today, I am sure we don't have to convince you that global education is as important as any other skill that students need to develop over their educational career. School is a wonderful, a school setting is a wonderful setting for this to happen because it lends itself across so many different subjects, subject matters, subject areas, educators from around the world, educators that have traveled. All of that lives within a school building and is a wonderful opportunity to take advantage of those conditions to bring that to students. So, just like the slide shows, we don't have to convince you that it's great, but at the same time, we know that there are limited resources available to working through those global education pieces that we want to bring to students. And then, the question of equity becomes a key element. Yes, we know that there are roadblocks. Yes, we know that not everyone is convinced at the district or at the school administration level that there are questions and that there is limited access and limited quality when it comes to professional development around global education that can bridge that language piece with the cultural piece and make it accessible to all students. That there are limitations in terms of framework for sustainability over time. And the big question is access and equity. We want all students to have exposure to quality global education. That access doesn't mean everyone gets everything the same way. It really means that people do have access and that we can curtail these programs to the needs of our students anywhere in the world we are and based on our realities. And then there is certainly another roadblock, which is How do we track students' outcomes? How do we measure that they are more and more globally aware, that they're more skillful in dealing with differences, in finding new solutions to world problems? These are all questions that are keeping us engaged in the field, because it's prompting us to find ways to solutions and pathways to solutions to some of these problems. So if we stop for a moment and think about the roadblocks, and think about some of the definitions and the experiences that we've already shared, let's think basically why global education is important. And I'll give you just a few seconds for you to read this individually. And I am sure that as you read this, some of these elements resonate with you. We know that we are interdependent. We know that our companies don't operate in one single country. We know that people are mobile, that people are accessing jobs across borders. We know that we have to collaborate with other people who are, in some cases, similar to us, but in many cases different from us. And all of that prompts us to think more globally on how we can solve some of these problems. The U.S. Department of Education also acknowledges the importance of global education, and their statement actually includes, of course, education, but the elements of equity and impact. And what they are seeking, and what we're all seeking here in the United States, is to foster global competitiveness with education that is excellent and that is accessible to all students. And I think that is a very succinct but very powerful statement from the U.S. Department of Education. And this then brings the mission down to each one of the hundreds and thousands of school districts that are across the United States. We need to provide that element of global education, not only to a subgroup of students who typically get the benefit of global education if they're part of an international school, or they're part of a specialized school, a private school. Right. But this actually puts the responsibility in public schools to make it accessible to all.
Right, and I promised Kevin that I wouldn't bring up this past week of political developments in the United States, but I just want to say that VIF is committed, along with groups like ISTE. Thank you, Stephanie, for we've been working closely with them. Really, that this commitment to equity and global education is going to be needed now more than ever, and we are committed to that advocacy, which we know will be a huge part of our job over the next years, and making sure that even with changes in the Department of Education, which are sure to come, that this will not be eroded, that sort of the progress that global education and dual language programs have made across the country, I think, have gotten enough traction that I think we can build on it regardless of new developments.
Correct. and so the charge then is, how do we create a system that is sustainable over time? And VIF has developed and has been working with this theory of practice, and this is something that we've done over the last few years, and we've seen the benefit of this. So if we think in backwards design a little bit, if we think that what our true goal is student learning and student impact around global education, including languages and culture, and all the content areas that our students are exposed to, then what we need to impact is teacher learning. We need to start with the teachers. We need to equip the teachers with the knowledge, the skills, and the attitudes that will help them create those classroom environments, those learning opportunities that will then impact that student learning. And it's a very simple, straightforward theory of action. You may think about it differently. You may have all the resources in the world. If you don't have teachers that know how to access and create those integral learning opportunities for students, then those resources are underutilized. You may have the greatest students in the world. If you're not operating from a structured framework that will help all students learn to the best of their ability, then those efforts are sort of limited as well. So again, we think that starting with professional development, that speaks to teachers and takes teachers where they are, because teachers also get nervous about global education. They say, I haven't traveled much, I don't know much. How do I go about, how am I going to ever talk to my students about some of these global education pieces if I myself have limited resources and knowledge? So that's where we need to begin. So we're going to break this down a little bit. Teacher learning is crucial, and here is where we're going to ask Steve to pop in with the first video clip, which is of our colleague, a former principal of one of our schools here in Edgecombe County in North Carolina, Erin Swanson, and she describes in just a phrase or two the importance of teacher learning and having access to some of those resources. And let us know, Steve, if you're able to pull that up for us.
Okay, I'm going to show this video. I'm also going to put it in the chat in case for some of you it's blocked. Kevin and Julie, you turn the microphone off because the sound will come back through. Perfect. And then if it does ask you to click play, do click play when it comes up.
Thank you, Steve. And one of the things that I need to go back to, there we go, thank you. So, Erin Swanson was the principal of Martin Millennium Academy out in Edgecombe County. This is a rural district in North Carolina. And their school and whole district, but Martin Millennium in particular, decided to integrate global education in their regular elementary program, while also hosting a dual language immersion program. And so the first step in planning the transition to global education as a whole school site was to help teachers understand what global education meant, create that definition that will work for them, and also give them access to those tools that will help them deliver those global connections that are beyond the bigger festivals that we have. So the bigger festivals are great because they involve the community, they pull in different resources, but what we really want teachers to be thinking about is when I teach daily, when I talk about my science, when I talk about my math, how can I make those connections real for students? So creating that space, creating that framework is what the professional development achieves and helps teachers to understand how to do it. And so one of the things that Julie and her team did was at the end of the year, they started looking at some of these outcomes from teacher learning. And so what are teachers saying about their level of understanding after professional development? And this slide depicts, teachers' responses in terms of some of that professional development. They're saying that they understand language and culture and how to integrate that better. They're also saying that they know how to break things down for students and then create those bridges of understanding through comprehensible input. They understand how important a balanced literacy approach is, and infusing global content in that reading and that literacy development as they go through those standards that are required by the state and their districts. So there is a tremendous amount of work that we have and time we have to spend on making sure that teachers are learning continuously, and are integrating that learning into classroom practice. And so here is a quote from one of our participating teachers. Again, this one is in Edgecombe County, and I didn't even realize it was the same district. And this teacher says, everything can be global if you struggle with ideas. Look at the big picture. For PE, which is physical education here in the United States, where did these games we play come from? How were they played? Bring that information into the classroom. She's referencing math. She's talking about world structures and bringing in different architectural features into math, into science, and into social studies. So when a teacher understands through teacher learning and through professional development how to make these global connections more integrated into their daily instructional life, that's where the magic happens. So global education is not seen as just the Spring Festival or the International Festival that happens once a year, but it's more a new way of thinking about teaching and learning. It is embedded in everyday learning in the classroom.
So Peggy, you had asked about the results based on after they implemented the program. So this is a really good question because I'm actually like reworking even our evaluation design. We partner with the Friday Institute at North Carolina State University, and the sort of the holy grail of professional development is, does it impact student learning? And that's a very difficult case to make because of all of the other things going on in schools and all of the other issues that we have with education research in terms of isolating basically the dependent variable and what actually causes increases in student engagement and learning. But because of the nature of our PD at least, which is very job embedded, teachers do online modules every 8 weeks. We have constant contact with these folks, with our program managers, and this is the department that Kevin leads. We are now really seeing a lot, and then we're now seeing these results after a year and 2 years, really giving teachers time to experiment with new ideas, to get through the first level of discomfort of saying, now I'm doing global, like what is that? Do I now have to be an expert? I got to do all this other stuff. And what we've really, I come from an ed tech background and project-based learning background, and so what I see is that the global is this really good vehicle for all of these other practices. So interdisciplinary learning, concept-based teaching can all be done through global projects really well. But teachers need time to practice this kind of teaching, so generally the impacts that we are seeing are really coming in that second year. So part of our job is also having school systems kind of trust us, and Edgecombe is an amazing case study because this is in Tarboro, North Carolina. It's one of the poorest counties in the state, and really just such a talented group of school system administrators, teachers, kids, that really, I think we're dealing with sort of the poverty of low expectations, and I think, we should not be surprised. I've been on a soapbox that kids can excel this way, and teachers can excel this way. They just need the opportunity, and so I think these were administrators in particular that were willing to give their teachers space and time in a non-punitive environment to try out new ideas, and now we're starting to see not only impact on teacher engagement, but student engagement and student test scores, anyway, so yeah. That's my spiel there.
That is a perfect segue into the next video, Steve, if you could. And this is a video where teachers are actually a couple of teachers are actually talking about what global education has meant for them from a practitioner's point of view. So let's see if we can cue that up. And we'll only show maybe the first minute and a half.
I'm going to put the video on. I'll put the link in the chat again. And when you're at the place where you want it to stop, just click on the screen with a squiggly line at the top, and it will bring us back to this room. And then do be sure to turn your microphone off.
Okay.
Okay, great. Okay.
Did you need to go to application share, Kevin?
Stephen, did we stop? Are we good?
Yeah, I'm bringing you back to the slides.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we're back.
So like Julie was saying, that professional development is critical in helping teachers understand how to then make the transition of what they're learning to how they teach and what experiences they want students to have. So we're going to move forward here. I'm a little cognizant of the time and want to make sure that we have some opportunity to field some of your questions as well. What you're seeing right now is some of the offerings that through organizations you can have access to. In particular at VIF, we have a series of courses for educators to learn over time how to integrate global education in their day-to-day teaching and learning practices. And so, in particular, when we're talking about language development and when we're talking about global education, we have developed courses for dual language immersion teachers from a cultural perspective. So how do you integrate global inquiry into your literacy? How do you make sure that you are acknowledging your students' backgrounds, their heritage, that you can bring that richness of their heritage into the classroom and into classroom examples that you use? How do you integrate your community into your daily teaching? So we're also going to provide you with the link to participate.com, which hosts all of our courses, and you can take a look if you're interested at some of that coursework. It may be interesting to you across the globe to see what of that resonates with you, what you think you can adopt, and what you think you can access that makes sense for your particular learning environment and your particular school system. And of course, the professional development that we know works through the experience that we've had at VIF is one where we're giving educators the knowledge base, the background information on how to integrate technology with culture, for example, language and culture, but also it calls for action. So we're not just leaving it at the level of knowledge for the teachers, but each one of these courses requires for teachers to actually do a project-based global learning lesson with their students, and then do reflection on how what they saw their students benefited from, how they felt as educators as they implemented this in their lessons. So it is also based on an inquiry platform, an inquiry, I would say, at a loss for words now, but an inquiry approach to professional development. So as teachers learn, they involve students in the learning, and then they can then take a look at the outcomes and measure it from there. And measuring is the other piece that we want to touch on. So we're talking about globally competent students. What are some of those skills that we want to ensure that students develop through their academic career that will actually make them globally competent, that will make them good global citizens? We're talking about things like appreciation of culture, evaluation of information, certainly cross-cultural communication skills, preparing a perspective taking, which is so important, and the more we are embedded in this adult life and being interdependent globally, we know that problems are solved and better solved when we're able to take and we're able to teach our students to consider different perspectives on world problems. Intelligent humility, divergent thinking. We hear the expression, think outside the box. Well, the box is the world. Let's think about how other people from around the world tackle problems and look at problems and analyze situations. And then technological literacy. Information is at the tip of our fingers. we need to access that information, but when we access that information, we then need to understand the cultural, political, and social background from that frames the information that we're seeing. Students need to understand all of these things. So, you know, when we ask the question, where do you start? You have to start with understanding that these are some of the skills that students need, and then we need to then come to, you know, how do we create a space within our already busy school day and school year to integrate global? How do we make sure that our kindergartners are learning from a global perspective, and what does that look like? How do we then go from kindergarten all the way up to 3rd grade and know that our 3rd graders are still engaging in global learning at a deeper level of inquiry than that of the kindergartners? And so when you take a look at, Steve, we can also drop this link in the chat feature. We want to give you access to the Partnership for 21st Century Skills competence indicators, and these are divided by grade levels, and they span K-12, and the picture you're seeing on your screen is just that of the K-5 indicators. The great thing about them is that they give us a framework of understanding of those skills. So again, you look at kindergarten and what the overall global learning should be, and then you look at 2nd, 3rd grade, you see it's a little more complex. 4th and 5th grade is a little more complex, and that leads into secondary education, and certainly utilizing all the skills that the children and the perspectives that the children bring from elementary into those global studies courses that are typical in secondary programs. But when you go back to the indicators, you will also find a checklist, and that checklist is allows the teachers to actually plan activities throughout the year and make sure that they can take a gauge of whether or not students are achieving those skills. And so that is a great tool, and unfortunately we don't have time to look through it. But when you pick up the P21 document, and when you download it, it's a PDF that you can download. It will speak to you, and it will create a pathway for you to think about your own global education plan for your school and your district. And then this is something that you will have access to at a later time. But the gist of this is that if we are to really talk about equity in global education, equity across languages, we really need to think about global education as more than an individual initiative. There needs to be collaborative and shared leadership when it comes to global education. You know, individuals have that great energy. Individuals bring those ideas, but those ideas need to then be put into a system that is sustainable over the course of that, you know, your child and my child's academic career. Mm-hmm. And so that is what we are working towards at VIF. And so there are 4 areas, and this is where we'll start to come to a conclusion. But there are 4 areas that we think a school needs to develop when they're thinking about implementing a global program. And that is certainly teacher learning, or educating the educator as one of that. You need to access that professional development. And then you need to create an environment where global is celebrated. You need to make sure that from day to day that there is global integration in learning, that teachers are planning their lessons and units from a global perspective, and that they're doing it systematically, they're doing it constantly, and that you're connecting beyond the classroom, because global education is all about connections and what we can learn from each other and what we can share with each other and how we can learn to experience the world from a more productive, more positive experience. So we do have another 5 minutes on the session, and want to make sure that both Julie and I can look at some of your comments, some of your ideas, and we hope that the information that we've shared is of help to you. Once we get the session recorded, the last slide is going to take you to some links and documents that you are able to download and take a look at, and certainly with my email, and we'll make sure that we get Julie's information up there as well, that you can contact us for further information and questions if you have further questions. And
yeah, and I'm just going to put in the participate.com link in the chat, because if you create an account there, there are some there's an entire OER library of resources across global education. We have dual language resources in there, in Spanish, across K-12, US again, and hopefully those will be applicable globally. And in addition, there are open courses with badges attached. There's actually one from New Global Citizens that we'd love for you to participate in and check out. So please do.
Mm-hmm. And it is exciting because again, we started with the premise of as the assumption that language education and culture go hand in hand, and yes, it goes hand in hand, but we need to make sure that we're thinking about it as a system, as a framework in which students will be able to develop those skills and learn as they go and enjoy it, and then turn around and become those global citizens that we know we currently need anywhere in the world that we are, because it is that important for us and for the future of our planet and our society. We're going to stick around for the next few minutes.
Oh, this is great. So Peggy, you use Participate. This is great. So one thing that we can say is that in last April, so VIF, we've been working for 30 years, doing a lot of international teacher recruitment and global education programs, and we had an online platform, and I think we just wanted it to be more accessible, more robust, and so we joined forces with Participate.com. Essentially, we acquired them last April, and so that's our platform. So yeah, please check it out, and yeah, we're sort of integrating all of our global resources into the common.
All right, folks, reach out to us via email or via Twitter, and we can certainly touch base with you. We appreciate your participation in this session today, and we know that you have another session to attend. So we will leave you with these links, and you can reach us on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and at VIFlearn.com.
Yeah, and we can also we can get emails too if you want the Kevin's presentation.
Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a wonderful rest of the conference.
You're welcome. Thank you both. You can save the slides now or in the recording by going to File, Save Whiteboard, and save it as a PDF. For Julie and Kevin, just know that those links on the screen aren't hot links. So you may give them one place to go, or Kevin, if you want to send me the links, I can put them in your keynote description so that people can go to the website and see them there.
I will do that, certainly.
Yeah, most of and I think, Steve, you had put the P21 link already, and that's where you can get those global competence indicators. We collaborated with the partnership for 21st century skills there. And then the drivers of change in global education and equitable prep can all be found at VIFlearn.com under resources.
But I will send the link so that it's easier for everyone to access.
Great job. I'm going to turn off the recording now. And there are a ton of great sessions coming up, so I hope everybody has a fun rest of the day and even more tomorrow. Thanks, Julie. Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.
Bye, everybody.